There is a truth that, if you truly understand it, your life will never go back to the way it was. Not because it is too complicated, but because it is so simple that it is almost frightening. You do not fail to see the truth because it is hidden. You fail to see it because you yourself have never been ready to see it. Stop for a second and ask yourself this. What if everything you call reality is only the surface? What if everything you believe about yourself is just a story repeated long enough that you started believing it was real? You wake up every day, live, think, feel, love, hate. You believe that is you. But what if there comes a moment when all of that falls apart? What if the self you have clung to for so long never truly existed at all? There are paths in human history that were never meant for the majority, not because they were forbidden, but because the cost of them was too great. This is not the path that makes you stronger, not the one that makes you smarter, not the one that lets you control the world. It is the path where you have to lose yourself. And the most unsettling part is this. Many people have stepped onto that path, but never returned the same. They were not insane. They did not lose their minds, but they began to see the world in a way the rest of humanity could no longer understand. They spoke of a reality beyond time, of moments where past, present, and future dissolve into one, of a world where everything you see is only the shadow of something deeper, something more real. And they insisted on one thing that makes most people uncomfortable. The problem is not the world. The problem is you. You are not lacking knowledge. You are covered over, not by someone else, but by your own ego. There is an invisible veil between you and the truth. You do not see it, yet it shapes your entire way of seeing the world. It makes you believe that you are the center, that your thoughts are reality, that your emotions are who you are. But if that veil were torn away, you would not just see the truth. You would no longer be the same person you were before. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained. This is not an entertainment video. This is not just another lecture. This is a journey, and it begins with a question very few people dare to face. Are you willing to lose yourself in order to find the truth? If you are still watching at this point, maybe that is not random. Maybe some part of you has already sensed that something is not right, that this life, with everything it offers, is still missing something deeper. But be careful. Not everyone should keep going. There are forms of knowledge that, if they come too early, will not enlighten you. They will break you. There are truths that are not meant to be understood by the mind. They have to be experienced through something else, something most of us have never really learned to use the right way. The heart. Not the emotional heart, but the deepest center of human perception, the place not ruled by thoughts, fears, or desires. But for that heart to open, you will have to let go of many things, not only bad habits, not only material desires, but the very self you have spent your whole life constructing. And that is why this path has always been misunderstood. Some people call it mystical, some call it dangerous, some avoid it completely, but the people who truly walk into it are not seeking power, not seeking miracles, not seeking uniqueness. They seek only one thing, truth. And in that journey, they discover something nobody prepared them for. That truth is not found in learning something new. It is found in how much you are willing to let go. So before we go deeper into this journey, ask yourself once again, are you looking for knowledge, or are you ready to change? If this path were only a vague idea, humanity would never have traveled so far on it across the centuries. It is not a passing inspiration. It is a very clearly formed system, a journey with structure, with order, and with doors that anyone who enters must pass through. But the important thing to understand is this. You cannot skip those doors. You cannot jump straight to the end. Each stage is not only a step forward, it is a complete transformation of you. The first door is not something mystical. It is very simple, almost ordinary. It is the work of bringing order into your own life. At this stage, you learn to control your behavior, your speech, your instinctive reactions. Not to become perfect in the eyes of other people, but to create stability inside yourself. Because if your outer life is still chaotic, your inner life can never become quiet. This is the stage many people underestimate. They want to move faster, skip the basic disciplines, go straight into the deeper experiences. But they do not realize that without this foundation, everything that comes later becomes dangerous. A mind without discipline, once it enters deeper levels, will not find truth. It will only magnify its own chaos. Once the foundation has been laid, the path begins to turn. It no longer focuses on outward behavior, but moves inward. This is where you begin to realize that what you are confronting is no longer the world, but yourself. You begin to observe subtler movements, repeated thoughts, hidden emotions, reactions you never noticed before, and you realize something many people do not like to admit: that much of what you call freedom is really just the operation of unconscious habits. At this stage, having a guide is no longer optional. It becomes almost necessary, because when you go deep inside, you are not only facing truth, you are also facing the most refined illusions of the ego. There will be moments when you think you understand, moments when you feel that you have achieved something, but those very feelings may be the greatest trap. A guide does not hand you answers. They help you see what you cannot see alone. They keep you from getting lost inside your own experience. And then, as the process of observation deepens, a major shift happens. You stop trying to understand. You begin to experience. This is a point that is very difficult to describe in words, because here, knowledge is no longer at the center. Everything you once learned, read, and trusted gradually loses its weight, not because it was false, but because it is no longer enough. You begin to realize there are things that cannot be transmitted through language. You cannot explain an experience to someone who has never had it, just as you cannot describe the taste of something to a person who has never tasted it. You can only know by directly living inside it. At this stage, the world begins to change, not because it is different, but because the way you see it is different. Things you once considered ordinary now carry a new depth. Small moments become vivid. Sounds, movements, details you used to ignore now feel as though they are speaking to you. But at the same time, a danger appears. When the experience becomes powerful, the ego can return in a more subtle form. It begins to whisper that you are special, that you have seen what others have not, that you have gone beyond them. And if you believe that, you will stop there. Many people have stopped at that point, not because they could not continue, but because they did not want to let go of the feeling that they had achieved something. But this path does not allow you to keep anything, not even the feeling of progress. And then, if you keep going, if you are willing to release even the deepest experiences, you reach a point where every concept begins to dissolve. There is no longer a seeker, no longer a path, no longer a goal. What remains cannot be described with familiar words. It is not an emotional state, not an idea, not a belief. It is like waking up from a dream and realizing that everything you once worried about, chased after, and believed in was only part of that dream. And in that moment, you do not attain truth. You realize it was always there. You simply had never truly seen it. There is a moment in this journey that no book can prepare you for. No lecture can fully describe it. It is the moment when everything you once called yourself begins to fall apart. Not disappear in the sense that you die, but a quiet withdrawal of the self you have been familiar with your whole life. At first, it comes very gently. You begin to feel a distance between yourself and your thoughts. Reactions no longer take hold of you as instantly as before. A space appears, very small, but enough for you to realize that you are no longer being carried away by everything. Then that space begins to grow. Things that used to make you angry now pass through without leaving the same deep mark. Desires that used to drive you begin to lose their weight. You still see them, but they no longer control you. That is when you realize something very strange. The self you thought was at the center was never really in control. But this moment is also the beginning of something deeper, a process many people would fear if they saw it too clearly. Because the deeper you go, the less you can find yourself. Your definitions of who you are begin to fall away. It is no longer clear what is me and what is not me. The boundaries you once thought were solid begin to blur. You no longer feel like the one thinking. You no longer feel like the one acting. Everything still happens, but the sense of ownership is gone. This is the state many people describe as the dissolution of the ego. And if you look at it from the outside, it can seem terrifying, because everything you once relied on to define yourself is no longer there. No personal story, no familiar role, no feeling of I am the one doing this. Only a flow where action happens, words appear, life continues, but without a personal center behind it. And if you try to grab it back, try to hold on to some part of that self, you will feel a very clear tension. Because this process does not allow you to keep anything. It does not destroy you violently. It dissolves you slowly, like a drop of water falling into the ocean. You do not disappear, but you are no longer a separate drop. This is where many people stop. Not because they cannot go farther, but because they fear this complete disappearance. They want to keep some piece of themselves, some familiar anchor, some sense of control. But if you stop here, you will always remain between two worlds. One part of you has seen, but another part still clings. And that tension is one of the most painful states a human being can live through. Only when you let go completely does the process finish. And when it does, something unexpected happens. You return, not return in the way you imagine, not becoming the old person again, not recovering the self you lost, but returning to the world with an entirely different awareness. You still speak, still work, still live like everyone else. From the outside, nothing seems extraordinary, but inside, everything has changed. There is no longer the sense that you are controlling life, no longer the need to assert yourself, no longer the strain of trying to become something. Actions happen naturally, not from pressure, not from fear, not from ambition, but from a deeper source, a quieter one. You begin to realize that life does not need you to control it. It has always been unfolding. It has always been moving. And most of what you once called control was only an illusion. What changes is not the world. It is your relationship to it. You no longer stand across from life as a separate individual. You no longer feel as though you are resisting it or trying to possess something from it. You are inside its flow. And from that, a new state appears. Not excitement, not intense emotion, but a deep steadiness, a peace that does not depend on circumstances, a clarity that is not shaken by thought, a presence that requires no effort. You do not need to prove anything, do not need to achieve anything, do not need to become someone else, because what you were always searching for was never out in front of you. It was only hidden by the self you finally laid down. And when there is nothing left to hold on to, you do not lose life. For the first time, you truly live. When the journey reaches the point where there is nothing left to hold on to, many people think that is the end. But in truth, it is only the place where another truth begins to appear, a truth that is very easy to misunderstand if the foundation is not deep enough. Because everything you have gone through, everything you have let go of, everything that has dissolved, was not meant to turn you into an empty being. It was meant to help you recognize the one thing that never left you from beginning to end. Love. Not the kind of feeling human beings usually call by that name. Not an emotion that comes and goes. Not an attachment with conditions. Not an exchange between two separate beings. Something far deeper than that, a source that does not depend on circumstances, does not change with time, and is not controlled by what happens outside you. It is a state in which you no longer love because you want something back. You do not love because you need to be loved in return. You do not love because you are afraid of losing. You love because that is what remains when everything else has fallen away. And when you look back over the whole journey, you begin to understand something that was very difficult to accept before. This path was never about strength, never about special abilities, and never about touching hidden secrets in order to control reality. If those things appear at all, they are only side effects, never the goal. The only goal, if it can even be called a goal, is the purity of the heart, a heart no longer distorted by ego, a heart no longer seeking anything for itself. But right there, a major question appears. If it is this simple, why is it hidden? Why are these things not spoken clearly to everyone? The answer is not that someone is deliberately hiding them. It lies in human nature itself. There is a veil, not outside, but inside each person's perception. A veil that makes you see everything through the lens of yourself, making you interpret reality according to your needs, your fears, and your desires. That veil is not the enemy. It is part of the process. But if you do not recognize it, you will believe that what you see is the whole truth. And that is where the danger begins. Because when someone approaches deeper layers of perception before they are ready, they do not see truth, they see a distorted version of it, reflected through an ego that has not yet been purified. They may believe they now understand everything. They may believe they have gone beyond others. They may believe they have touched the ultimate. But in truth, they are only lost inside a more refined illusion. That is why throughout history, the people who truly went deep into this path always emphasized preparation, discipline, and above all humility. not to limit human beings, but to protect them from their own misunderstanding. There are truths that, if you see them too early, you will not know how to place them correctly, and instead of freeing you, they will leave you disoriented. Imagine standing before an endless ocean. If you have never learned how to swim, you will not see its beauty, you will only see its threat. In the same way, when the veil begins to thin, what appears is not always comfortable. Some people describe it as infinite light, a place where everything becomes clearer than ever before. But others say it feels like a vast emptiness, too wide and too deep for the mind to hold. And in both cases, without preparation, a person can easily be overwhelmed. That is why the most important question is not, what lies beyond the veil? It is, are you ready to see it? Because when that veil is truly lifted, you will not just see another reality. You will see yourself in a completely different way. And that may be the most liberating thing, or the most terrifying. But perhaps this is the most important place this whole journey is trying to bring you. Not so you can chase mysteries, not so you can force yourself into some extraordinary state, but so you can realize that everything you are searching for was never outside you. It has always been here, always present, always closer than anything you could imagine. You were simply distracted for too long. And now, as you stand at this threshold, the question is no longer how far you can go. It is whether you dare to continue, knowing that every step will take away some part of the old person inside you. Because this path does not end with you finding something new. It ends when there is nothing left to search for. And in that very moment, you realize that the journey never really began. There was only you, finally stopping long enough to see. The greatest lesson this journey leaves behind is not that you need to become someone else, but that you need to look back at yourself with more honesty and more depth than ever before. Start with very small things. Observe your thoughts when you are angry. Notice your emotions when you are hurt. And ask yourself what inside you is actually reacting. When you no longer rush to identify yourself with everything that appears in your mind, you begin creating space. And inside that space, freedom slowly begins to emerge. You do not need to leave life behind in order to search for truth. You only need to live with more awareness inside the life you already have. When you work, truly be present. When you speak, listen more deeply. When you face difficulty, do not just react, observe. Small steps like these, practice consistently, gradually change the way you experience the world. And maybe one day, you will realize that what you were always searching for was never far away at all. It never left you. If you want to keep exploring these depths, these stories that are rarely told in this way, and these perspectives that can change how you see life, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can keep learning together and going deeper into the inner journey, spiritual history, and timeless lessons. And do not forget to subscribe to Prophetic History Explained to support us and help us keep creating more meaningful and more profound content in the videos ahead.